And then of course, the employer, if they don't document as diligently as they should, if the worker gets injured again from the same repetitive injury, they can deny it, can't they, theoretically?
That's right, because then they'll say, well, you had a pre-existing injury before. Your condition is not related to this particular claim. You got injured before. You failed to make a claim. You've waived your remedy. Now, having said that, I must say that even an aggravation injury, even if you had a pre-existing injury and you aggravate that injury because of some work-related activity that you were performing, that is a compensable injury.
So when you mean by compensable injury, when you say that means that it can be compensated through workman's comp,
right?
Documented.
That means that the workers' comp carrier would pay for your reasonable and necessary medical care and also your temporary disability benefits should you require disability benefits.
Well, okay, and let me stop you there. You know, time and time again, you know, we were talking off camera and before we started, you told me about some of the harrowing stories that people encounter. Doctors who are working for these companies who may not return people back to work. I mean, they will return them, in other words, back to work even if they're hurt. I mean, if the injured worker doesn't agree with the doctor's opinion, well, they're going to the company doctor. In this day and age and under the new law, do they have the right to go seek a second opinion?
As a matter of fact, Joe, the injured worker has an absolute right to pick a doctor of his or her choosing. And generally, you have 60 days to choose a doctor of your choice. But that's the problem. The injured workers don't know their rights. The employers are not telling them, they're not telling the injured workers their rights. They don't tell them, hey, we have workers' comp. This is what you need to do. At least I don't find that in my practice. When an injured worker comes to see me, it's because they're having trouble with the system, and a lot of times they're having trouble with the employer. That's what I don't understand. You know, you have these people who maybe have worked for the company for several years, they get injured on the job, and all of a sudden the whole theme changes, the behavior, the employer treatment. And I don't see this all the time, Joe, but every now and then I see that. Sometimes the employers are very sympathetic and very accommodating, and it's a pleasure to see that when that happens, because sometimes, believe it or not, the injury is witnessed, the employer supports what the injured worker is saying, and it's the insurance carrier that has denied it for whatever reason, and that's when we have to request a benefit review conference and or a contested case hearing, which are the administrative steps in a workers' compensation claim.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. We've talked about the general premise, our injured worker, our hypothetical injured worker with our hypothetical doctor and hypothetical clinic, and now we're looking at the steps where you said most times it works out. They pay their bills, maybe they get some time off, they get better. Unfortunately, there are those cases that doesn't happen in a perfect world. That may happen, but in real life, the injury is either trivialized initially by the worker themselves or the employer. So now we've got, in the last 5 minutes we've got on our show, before we take the break, and thank our sponsors. Let's go through that administrative hearing. Kind of walk through that anatomy. By the time they come to see you, Joel, and you can reach Joel if you have any specific questions on the show itself, on the general issue of this, at 887-6363, and that number is going to appear on your screen. Now, when you go through that, they've already come to you. They're probably not happy.
That's right. They're not happy. They're very frustrated. A lot of times they're not receiving the medical care that they're entitled to receive, and a lot of times they're not receiving any disability benefits, and yet they have a legitimate work-related injury and they're unable to work, and they're not receiving any financial compensation even though there's workers' comp in this claim. And I find the main problem is they simply don't know what to do. They don't know where the field office is. They haven't filled out the right claim form. So a lot of times when they come in, I help them fill out the initial claim, which is, the initials are DWC-41. And I guess that might be too technical for this show, but we fill out the initial claim form, and usually what I do is I request a designated doctor exam right away so we can get an independent, impartial doctor to evaluate those individual worker and determine what the extent of injury is and whether the disability is a direct result of the work-related injury.
Who pays for that independent doctor?
The insurance carrier.
So they're supposed to pay for the independent insurance doctor, but let me be the devil's advocate once more. What if the insurance agency, the workman's compensation insurance, sends them to Dr. Y every day? He's rolling in those independent exams. Wouldn't that skew? What if he starts just every case saying, insurance company, you need to pony up, insurance company, you need to pay, this guy needs to stay home 3 months, this guy may need to stay home forever, you're going to have to shell out for the rest of his life. If he does 90% of those, what happens to that independent doctor?
Well, I'll tell you what, the designated doctor, when a designated doctor is requested, nobody knows who that doctor's going to be.
Oh, okay.
I don't have any say in who the doctor's going to be. The injured worker has no say, and the insurance carrier has no say as far as the designated doctor is concerned.
Okay.
The Division of Workers' Compensation is the entity who selects a doctor. But you're right. After the designated doctor exam, the insurance carrier is entitled to send the injured worker for a required medical exam, and it's a doctor of the insurance carrier's choosing. And yes, I see the same doctors picked over and over. And no surprise there, usually those particular individuals write reports that are favorable to the insurance company. But it doesn't happen all the way, and I don't mean to sound like a leftist liberal here, but that's what I see. This is what I practice, and I see this happening time and time again.
Well, you're advocating, and you're listening to Joel Gonzalez. You can reach him at 361-887-6363, and his email is going to be appearing on here. But once in a while, we'll play it on radio. What's your email for those people out there?
It's joel@jglegalgroup.com.
That's joel@jglegalgroup.com. That information is going to be appearing for you. But remember, this show does not constitute specific legal advice from either Mr. Gonzalez or myself. Contact the attorney of your choice. And also remember that there's a great website out there, mytexasbar.com, and also LRIS. We've got a few seconds left, but I want to take the time to thank our sponsors, thematthewslawfirm.com. That's www.thematthewslawfirm.com. Out there in Houston off of Sackett Road, out there in Houston, David Matthews and Jason Webster doing a great job. And we'd also like to thank the Rhodes Vela law firm, and you can reach them at either trhodes at rhodesvela.com or fvela@rhodesvela.com. They're doing a great job out there with offices in San Antonio, Houston, and Corpus. And let's not forget Impact Credit Group USA.com. Tommy Holbein here locally and nationwide doing a great job trying to help people get back on their feet with their credit. And let's not forget Vasquez Flores Home Health. That's 881-9922. And also Mr. Reyna in his absence, the law offices of Juan Reyna, 993-8100. That's 361-993-8100. And you can also reach him at Mr. jreynalaw@yahoo.com. That's jreynalaw@yahoo.com. When we come back, and I hope you can stay with us, when we come back, we're going to be talking about SSI, which is the disability benefits. Everybody has questions about that, and it kind of ties in with the workman's comp. And we're going to come back after a brief break. We're going to talk about that with Mr. Joel Gonzalez when we come back.